Well, hello, greetings, and welcome. What are you here for today, sir?
Just like most people, I suck at Dota. Need some help.
That's fair. First step is admitting it. What's your like MMR, your position, all that deal?
Yep. So I play around 2.8 MMR. I've played most positions, but more recently mid lane and safe lane carry.
Okay. And what are you focusing on today?
So I've got two replays, and I guess the focus is how to play against a team with a timer. So when other team has stronger late game heroes, I find it hard to close games.
Okay. Cool. So, a lot of people think of late game as, how do I word this? They think they need to, like, beat the late game or something, is what I feel like a lot of players do. So they like try to go greedy or some shit, is what I see a lot of players do. And I'm not saying that's what you do. That's just like the initial impression I get of a lot of players around your bracket is they'll like see a Spectre lineup and they're like, let's just all build Battle Furies and Midases and hope to outcarry it. So what a lot of people don't realize is a lot of what affects this type of game is all it is pressure is the key to beating late game teams. Because when a team is stronger than you later on in the game, that means, guess what? You're stronger than them at 10 minutes. You know, you're stronger than them at 15 minutes. That's just the balance of Dota. So that means pressure needs to be applied. And pressure means you're restricting their farm. That means that they are responding to what you're doing. And not only does that make it so that you're usually getting a lot done, maybe you're forcing fights when they're not as strong as you, but it's also making it so that the late game, quote unquote, takes a longer time to get to because they're not farming while they're dealing with you, right? Like you're up in their face, you're maybe limiting their farming patterns, they're busy fighting you, and all that time that you're doing that, they're not being incredibly efficient. So if they're not being efficient, it takes them longer to get there, and that's usually the best way to deal with late game. So we're going to go ahead and see, and I just want to be clear to you and everyone else that that can be as early as like 5 minutes into the game. So we're going to see exactly what I feel like you're doing wrong, and sadly it kind of ends up this way, but a lot of games it'll end up being the first 15 to 20 minutes that I harp the fuck out of you on. And I want to be clear to you and everyone else that the first 15 to 20 minutes can be very high influence on whether or not you can actually beat these late game lineups. Like, if you aren't doing what's properly needs to be done by the 15-20 minute mark, it's already too late, is what I'm trying to say. So, like, a lot of people think, oh, you know, I make it to the 20 minute mark and then we lose. And I'm like, well, you didn't do a good enough job making it to the 20 minute mark. You know what I mean? Like, by the 20 minute mark, you were losing by too much. Is this the right game?
Do you mind sharing screen?
Oh.
I actually can't see it.
Fucking 1 for 4 today. God damn it. Okay, is this the right game?
Yep. So this is actually the same game for your first coach session.
I was wondering why I already had the replay, so go ahead.
Yeah. So I haven't played too many games this week, so it's actually hard to find some unique content.
Okay. So, who are you?
So I'm Lina. So the gist of this game, we took bottom and top racks, I believe, and we couldn't close the game.
Okay. So, for everyone else, the context, I already coached your friend on the Enchantress. And I talked to him a lot about that it was his job to pressure the top towers. And after he took top tier 1, he just stopped. He had no mana. You got ganked and doomed. And then he just left and never went back. So, if you watch the game from his perspective, it's his job to take the top towers and pressure them. And you'll watch... I'll fast forward to that part just to show you what I mean by what pressure does, okay? So this is just used as an example from his portion of the game. I need to go to 12. 12. So you get doomed and you die. And Doom's level fucking... He just got level 7. And he has... It's 12 minutes in the game. He's level 7. And he's got 2.4k net worth. Okay? This is like a safe lane Doom or whatever. Or something like that. So this guy gets that much net. He's barely level 7. 12 minutes in the game. 2,400 net worth. And your Enchantress just leaves top, and I expressed to him how important it was that he stayed top, and he like went back mid and farmed it, and I asked him how many heroes can farm mid, and he said almost all of us, and I said how many heroes can pressure top, and he said just me. I'm like, okay, good talk. So that pretty much says to him where he needs to be on the map, okay? And that's a great way to detect where you need to be on the map a lot. So like if you watch what happens because he doesn't pressure, look at this Dooms game.
Killing spree. A dominating performance.
In 2 minutes, that Doom gains 1,000 net worth and 2 levels. After having 2,400 net worth and level 6 at 12 minutes. Okay? So that just puts in perspective how much lack of pressure does. Okay? When the opponent has better late game than you. Is that like a good example of what I'm alluding to, and I'm now going to watch the game from your perspective?
Yeah.
Okay,
That's
cool.
good.
So I'm just giving you an example of why pressure is so important. Because the minute you give it up, you give the opponent the ability to get past the part of the game that they're losing, right? So that's what we're trying to avoid happening. So we're going to play it out for you.
The battle begins.
So first and foremost, a nice little mid mechanic is you should start your block from right here. See this little block thing right here? That's where the top right of your model should be.
Yep.
Nice little mid lane mechanics for you. You should have screen lock on so that your camera is locked on your hero in the middle. I believe that can be done by double clicking your portrait. It can be done by double clicking your hero thing and holding it. So if your hero, what's your hero select, Hockey?
Yes, I've been using the screen lock. I use 1 as the hotkey. So
Okay.
that's done.
Let's make sure you do.
And I guess I didn't use the right mechanic because I
Okay,
haven't
you are
actually
using it actually.
tested
Okay,
that out.
never mind. Sorry, I assumed you weren't going to do it because you weren't in the right place. So you got to stand on a little block. It'll help you out a lot. It's the best way to block on Radiant. Okay, you actually use the screen lock. Never mind. Sorry for wasting time. Continuing. You're against Clinks. Okay, fast forward. Not the best CSing, but there's not actually something I can say about that. It's just a matter of practicing CSing, so I'm not going to worry about that. You don't use creep aggro at all. I have noticed that. Okay, so creep aggro first and foremost. These creeps are... If you creep aggro right now, you are making it so that this range creep stops taking damage. So what that does is you have to think about obligations for your opponent in lane. It's clear his obligation is this range creep, right?
Yep.
Like, the next thing he wants to do is kill this range creep. So the idea behind it is you try to aggro creeps around people's obligations. So one way to do that is when this creep is almost near his range of hitting it, you aggro him, so his creeps stop hitting it. So then it stays at that health.
I think in my mind at that point, I normally do use creep aggro, but with Lina kind of lanes, I generally like to slave 2 or so creeps and himself. So I didn't really creep aggro in this situation.
Okay. As long as you know what I'm alluding to, then I'm not going to talk any further. But I think it's really important that you know about what I just alluded to. As long as you know that, and you're telling me that now, then I'll move on. So we will move on. Whenever you push lane into their tower and you're not contesting it, you should back off and block your creeps. Like right now should have been you blocking your creeps, so the creeps would have met at your hill instead of in the middle. These are all just fundamental things you can get in the habit of doing in the mid lane. So right here, you're clear. Wait, let me watch this. So you're actually trying to attack. Are you trying to attack him, or are you just trying to creep aggro here? Do you remember?
So I'm moving the creeps back so that I can get a free CS without him denying.
Okay, so you're just creep aggro, and you're not intending to attack him. So do you know the range on creep aggro?
Not to the detail. I think it's like 300 or something.
It's 500. So the reason why I'm emphasizing this, I don't know why I have it on such fast forward, is you're like 100 range from the creeps for this creep aggro. You can be right here for this creep aggro. Like, you can A-click him when you're right here and they'll chase you. So my point is, I'm noticing in your creep aggro that you're way too close to creeps. You know what this does? It's just going to get you right-clicked by a Clinks 2 or 3 times. Does that make sense? On ranged heroes, it's very position heavy. So I'm just pointing out little things Sorry about the fuzziness of my sandwich roll. I'm pointing out little things that if you know they exist, you'll pay attention to, and I would hope you could use to work on a lot. So, like, just know it's important. You should be using that max 500 range as much as you possibly can to creep aggro. I'm just noticing you're playing in the creep wave a lot. I think it's okay in terms of, like, positioning yourself for CSing, but when you're creep aggroing, I think it's just going to get you taking a lot more damage, and against a better player, it's going to hurt a lot more. This guy's not hitting you very much, to be honest with you. Like, a better player would have already hit you 3 times as much as this guy has. So, I don't mind that you're not contesting him under tower if that's what you so choose, but once again, block creeps, pick up rune, there's a rune right up top. Don't have that downtime. 2K players, the lower you go in MMR, the more likely it is that you waste a lot of time. That's really all Dota is efficiency of your time. So, I'm seeing here that there's a lot of times where you clear the wave and you have no purpose. So, options are waves to block, contesting him under tower if you think that's viable because you have nothing else to do, checking runes, you know, anything. Just something. There's always something to do. At the very least, blocking your creep wave, right? So never have this time. It's already happened twice in the first 4 creep waves, and it's something if you focus on, it'll never happen again. Okay, moving on. Just focusing on little late. Like, that rune should have gotten picked up last time, but that's fine. You got it better late than never. So this is a spot where you had an advantage in this lane. This is what I look at. You've got almost full mana. You've got an advantage. And this is what we talk about with pressure. Right here, you salve up and you run at this fucker. What's he going to do about it? Who ganks you on their team?
No one.
Okay. So this is something you always ask yourself in any lane. At any point in the game, on any hero, why do you not play aggressively? Generally speaking, why do you not play aggressively?
When you're scared or when there's a threat.
Yeah, when you're scared of something. Like if you play aggressively and they just have a way of killing you, right? They just could TP in a lion and he stuns you and you die underneath the guy's tower. But like, who's that this game? They don't have anybody. They're not going to do anything. So not only do they have no counterplay in terms of their other heroes, but Clinks is level 4 with no raindrops or anything, and he's got 270 health. Like, if you're that Clinks, aren't you just so fucking grateful that the enemy Lina was nice enough to leave you under tower alone? Aren't you just super grateful about that? If you're this guy?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So you're salving, so maybe kite the range of him while you're salving, but you should be, like, right here. You know what I'm saying? Like, following your creeps in, making it so that, honestly, if he walks up to hit you, Clinks' animation is so bad, you could stun him and slave him, right? So he can't actually walk up and hit you if you are right here. And that's one of those where you say, his counterplay would be to break my salve, and if he breaks my salve, Clinks' animation's so bad that I stun him, and if I stun him, he dies. Right? Like, that's how I think about it. I think, what's their counterplay? What does it look like? What do I do if they do it? And then play that out in my mind, right? Like, so in this case, I'm ready for him to walk up. If he chooses to do that, I'm going to stun him on his attack animation because it's so bad, and he's going to die. So in that case, his options are to either do that and die, or let me walk at him with Slave, right? And look, what's he going to do about that? You know what I mean? Like, he's just going to eat extra damage. And then, at this point in the game, what can you also do to enforce your aggression underneath the tower? In regards to your creep wave.
Not sure, to be honest. I would have just taken pot shots at the tower.
I'm helping you out.
Oh, glyph, yeah. Glyph.
Yeah, you can glyph your creep wave, right? So then you can kill his tower even more. Who on their team threatens towers? Does Bristle? Does Doom?
No.
Who threatens towers on their team?
Just Clinks.
So if he's not threatening your tower, does glyph have any other purpose?
No.
No. So I am pointing out to you, these are not factors. Okay, I've always been clear about this today, because sometimes I feel like this isn't made clear just by me explaining. If you do one of these things that I've mentioned in the last 5 minutes or 4 minutes better, you'll be 3K, right? If you do the day that you do all of these things always is the day you're 7K. Okay, like that's what I'm trying to say. These are all factors that are worth considering every game. what the use of your glyph is, what people's counterplay is, thinking about the fact that you're level 5 and he's level 4, checking his inventory and seeing he has no regen. Like, you have a creep wave under his tower, they have no tower threat, so you know they can't push your tower, so you glyph aggressively. They have no counter gank. All of that is stuff you can always consider, okay? And if you had considered like 2 of those things, you'd be diving this guy, right? Like, but if you considered 4 of them, you would dive him perfectly. Like, you would play it perfectly. Like, I had a guy the other day that was like 4K, like this was maybe last week or 2 weeks ago, that did the whole tower pressure thing. He had an Aquila on Luna, he had level 6, and he played aggressively, but he didn't glyph his creep wave, so his catapult died, and then the tower ended up surviving with like half health later on, or that creep wave, or sorry, that like attempt that he did. And then later on, it survived with like 100 health. I'm like, if you had glyphed your creep wave earlier, this tower would have died instead of getting denied. And I'm like, so he got like 2 or 3 of the steps down. You have, no offense, 0. So our goal is that if you can get 1 or 2 of those at a time, that's how you're going to become more pressure. You know what I'm saying? So the fact is, people in your bracket just don't do that kind of shit. So guess how many times that Clinks has been used to getting dove by a Lina at 3 minutes into the game? Right? Never. So he's just going to die to it. Why do you die here? Because you weren't aggressive on Clinks when you should have been. This is how Dota works. If you miss opportunities to be aggressive, you end up paying for it later. That's all it is. Like, whether it's in the example of a laning stage, 4 minutes into the game like this, or it's an example of not pushing high ground at 30 when you were supposed to. You know what I mean? It's all the same thing. It's just early on, it's a very simple version of it. Meaning, like, it's just a one-on-one hero matchup kind of thing. So if you don't know when to push the limits in a one-on-one hero matchup, how are you going to know when to push them in the grand scheme of games? So what I look at is, if you want your late mid-game decision-making to be better, that has a lot more factors in it than now. So it's better to work on your decision-making now in regards to pushing your limits at this stage in the game. And then once you get better at it this stage in the game, you'll then do it better at like 20 minutes and 25. And, you know, as you gain more knowledge of Dota, right? So if you don't understand a lane matchup, go study it. Or play against your friend or something a couple times. If you don't understand a hero's limits, play that hero 5 times in a row. You know, whatever it takes for you specifically. Is it the hero understanding that's limited? Is it your, like, need to remember glyph? Is it your creep out? You know, like, everyone's different, right? Whatever is limiting them. So for you, you know, it's just identifying which one of those factors is your limiting factor. Because for me, it was different than it is for other 7K players kind of thing. Okay. If all that makes sense, then we're good to go.
Yeah, we're good to go.
Okay, cool. So, nice. That works out. So he's dead. We want you to pressure the tower, which you're doing. So,
Dire's middle tower is under attack.
are you investing your mana for the future?
Most likely.
Okay, so you're just like saying, hey, this is getting interest over time. It'll pay off, you know, 10 years down the road in my pension plan. That's what my mana's for?
I think in my mind, I was expecting to use the mana when Clinks comes back.
I got you. So what if Clinks comes back to a half-dead tower? You know what I'm saying? Like, why don't you fly yourself boots and 4 clarities? And then once he TP's back in, you go pick up the rune, and then you come back with full health, full mana. He's lost half of his health, or lost half the health on his tower, and then you're already back in his face. Do you see what I'm saying, though? Like, my point is, I'm not trying to be a I mean, I was being a sarcastic asshole, but the point is that when people are dead, you need to maximize efficiency, period, like, as much as possible. And so I understand the idea that you want to be ready when he comes back, but there's so many things that you can do on the map that you should just be expending mana. You should not lose 3 fiery soul charges here. Like, you should have 3 charges. You should be killing this tower as much damage as you possibly can. The amount of damage you got on this tower, I guarantee you, is a 1/7 of what you should have gotten. Like, I'm not under-exaggerating that. You should be wailing on that tower. You should be fording this range creep so this creep stays alive. You should be ready to, like, punish this guy. And if he TP's back in right in front of your face, you stun him. If he TP's back here, okay, you nuke the next wave and you go pick up the rune at 6 minutes. Yeah, you're not supposed to pick up the 540 rune or the 4-minute rune because it's not supposed to be here. But the fact is it is there, but you should nuke in the wave and then go at 6 minutes. And then what happens if you go check this rune? If it's there, you're good. If not, you go shrine. If you want to check this rune, same idea. Like me and I, you know what I'm saying? Like you have options either way. I'm giving you like a decision tree where all of these decisions lead to you coming back to lane with pretty much full health, full mana, but they lead to you doing half this guy's tower and damage. If you do what I told you, guess how many times you have to kill that guy before you take his tower?
Probably twice.
Twice, right? But the way you're doing it, you have to kill him like 7 times, 8 times, you know, like before you get this tower. And that's this idea of winning games when people have better late game than you. And so I feel like a broken record to some extent, but every session I'm in with 4K or lower, even if 5K it's a thing, it's just not as exaggerated. It's so much about what you guys do when you get kills. Like you just get kills and you're like, I'm chilling, I killed him. We're good. The kill is this is the analogy that I would use my shitty BSJ analogy version. I just went to work for 8 hours and then I didn't want my paycheck. That's what that equivalent is to me. You worked all that for get the kill, and then you just didn't get paid for it. You didn't get any reward. You got to you got a tip or something. You didn't actually get paid for your hourly wage. It's like you put in all that effort, and then you're like, oh, the guy's dead now. We're good. We're cool. I feel like it's just how it always is. And so think about the sense of urgency all you guys need to have when you kill somebody. It's a major part of closing games out at all stages of the game, and if you don't do it at 7 minutes, I guarantee you will not do it at 30. And as the game goes on, these things become even more important. Why do you die there? Because the lane's into your tower. Why is the lane into your tower? Because you gave up pressure when you killed the guy at 6 minutes into the game. 5 minutes into the game. It's all related. I tried to explain it in the last coaching session to the guy, and it's the same idea. He gave up pressure. I don't remember after what, but same idea there. I probably would have demanded a ward. Whenever you're winning mid this hard and you don't have ward control, that's like not an acceptable thing, I guess. So whether you have to bitch at your friends, because I know this is a party queue game, or you have to buy yourself a ward when you're this far ahead. If you're this far ahead, invest in pushing that lead. Leads mean that you have control of whatever means you have a lead. So what I mean by that is if you win mid lane, that means you have control of mid lane. Okay, so that does that make sense? Like if you won a lane, that means you control that area. Like that's what it means to win. So if you're winning as a team, that means overall you control more of the map than the opponent. That's like the definition of winning in Dota. So if you're winning a lane and this is what it looks like to you, it's just not acceptable. Is it necessarily your job, and if you get to 5-6K, is this what it's going to look like? Probably not. But like, it is your job, actually, even at the 7K level, to demand what your hero needs to do its job. And I think in this game, a ward mid would be a pretty huge deal for you. So if you were to... I just feel like you're not talking. Are you like getting all of this? I just want to make sure.
Yeah, I'm listening.
Okay, you're just listening, making sure. Everyone's a little bit different. So, with that in mind, how many Linas have you seen? Okay, what would you say Lina's game looks like for the first 12 to 15 minutes? What does her game look like in an ideal world? What type of game does she play? Like, best description you can give me.
So I've seen 2 types of Lina games. One is a heavy rotation, and the second one is using fiery stacks to farm neutrals for the Yules and the Lofars.
Okay. So, I feel like if you watch competitive Linas, like really high tier Linas, I'm saying, a rotation will be them walking to that lane, killing somebody, and leaving. That's the definition of a rotation. Like, for Lina, specifically. She's not like a DK where she rotates to that lane, kills the guy, and then gets a tower off of it. Okay, that's not what Lina does. Like, that's just not what she does. So, and that's important to understand when you're playing a hero. And so, in a normal game of Lina, like, I think You said there's two types of Linas. You see the rotation heavy, and you see... I'm talking about mid Lina, by the way, for everybody. I know there's like supports and offlane Linas we've seen in TI, but I'm talking about mid Lina. So, the rule... Have you heard me talk about rules and exceptions before?
No.
No. So I say I approach Dota like rules and exceptions. The rule is what I would do in an ideal situation, or what would be normal, quote unquote, for what that hero does, for what I want to do. Like PL. The rule is Diffusal Manta Heart. Exception is anything that makes me not do that build. Exactly. Like maybe I have to get a Hood because they have a Zeus. Maybe I go Shadow Blade because it's just like it's a Silver Edge game and it's really good that game, you know? Like, but the rule is Diffusal Manta Heart. And if there's nothing to dissuade me from going Diffusal Manta Heart, I'm going to do that every game. If that makes sense. That's like the default. So, for Lina, the rule is to play mid, push in the lane, pressure the tower as much as you think you can, and then hit neutrals, and rotate back and forth, farm up your Euls, farm up your Shadow Blade, kill people. That's like the rule for Lina, okay? So, the exception could be that you rotate on someone's lane. What could mean an exception for you? What kind of situation in a game could lead to an exception for Lina?
So I think in this game, we had a DK bottom. So that was kind of my push condition. That's why I made the rotation later on to go bottom, kill 2 heroes. And as a team, we push tower.
Okay, so the way I look at it is this. I saw you TP bottom because there was a bristle underneath your tower and you just ulted him and he died. Okay, so the exception in my mind is that there's a bristle underneath your tower when you have a hero that sets up with a stun and you just killed the guy. That's what I view as an exception, okay? And another exception is what if I find a haste rune, or an arcane, or a DD rune, or something like that, or an invis, you know? That's what I would view. The only exceptions I view is when they're making crazy plays underneath my own towers, or I get a rune that allows me to gank people. So that's the only 2 exceptions I see. So I understand what you're saying about DK. So you want to enable his game, but don't ruin your own game. You're a mid Lina. You are the carry of your team, honestly. I know you have a safe lane DK, but you're the carry. You're the win condition of this team. I know DK hits buildings, but you're actually the one that's going to deal damage to buildings when you go high ground. It's going to be you, because you're going to have a bajillion range, and it should be you. So you're the one that carries this game. I don't know if you realize that when you look at this lineup, but you carry this game. You are your team's win condition, and that's something to understand. But the point is, the rule is that you are pushing mid and you are farming neutrals. The exception is rotations. That's really all there is on Lina. Like, and the rest of it comes down to understanding how much you can push your limits while pushing the lane and farming neutrals. So, once you go kill somebody, how long should you stay in that lane?
Not long, to be honest.
You should go back to your immediate action. Like, whatever you should be doing. Okay, so that's how I look at Dota. I try to think of rules and exceptions. Rules are what I'm normally doing. Exceptions persuade me from doing that. So say I want to take this tower as a safe lane carry. And the exception is that someone on the enemy team is real fucking scary. Like I'm a PL and they have an Ember, and I know if Ember shows up and I'm at their tower, I just die. So I'm going to chill around here, and then the minute Ember shows bottom, I'm going to go push the tower, because that's what I wanted to do. But the reason why I couldn't do it was because Ember was there. You see what I'm saying? Like, as like this reasoning of... Rule is what I want to be doing in a standard situation. The exception is what stops me from doing that. My normal item build, my normal playstyle, my normal whatever. Like how I normally play the hero. So, for me, you have to understand that the rule you go back to whenever it's possible. Meaning, like, if you go do something else, the problem with Enchantress was the rule was to pressure top tier 2, right? And you guys get ganked or whatever, and he just gives up and goes elsewhere. And he's like, I took a fight bottom. I thought it would be very useful for me to go bottom. And I said, that's fine. You should be pressuring top, show up to this fight, and then guess what you do after the fight? You go right back top, right? Like, you don't go anywhere else. You go right back top. And like, that's what I tried to explain to him, and it applies to every role. You just need to identify your job in the game and do it. So, you need to have the discipline to understand that, like, your timings are so important, especially when you think you have an inferior late game to the opponent, that if you linger around doing random stuff that isn't what your hero is supposed to be doing, guess what? That just gives the enemy team another 2 minutes to hit their timings or whatever. So that's like... So I look at this. This is fine. Great. Maybe you get this kill too. This is great. None of this is bad. Nice. Okay, it ends up... I don't know what's happening, but you kill the guy. So that's fine. Oh, that's fine. You went for a kill? Look at your DK. Is he gonna fucking push? Nah. I ain't gonna fucking push. Get out of here. Look at the mid lane. Just egging you. Egging you. Look at this mid lane, right? If you watch pro players, they always have a lane, for the most part, they almost always have a lane, that is like their responsibility, okay? And the way they tell you what lane that is whenever they're jungling or doing something else, they always check that lane. Like, they just go look at it. Like, you can learn what a pro player thinks their a lane obligation is by what lane they're focusing on. When you see a carry jungling here or jungling here, sometimes you'll see them consistently checking this lane. Sometimes you'll see them consistently checking this lane. And guess what that means? If I'm a carry farming this camp and I'm checking what's going on with mid lane, what does that mean for me? Why am I doing that?
Because you care about the lane and where the creeps are.
Yeah, so when will I go to the mid lane if I'm a carry farming jungle?
When the creeps are against your tower.
Yeah, so if I see this and I was farming this camp, what should I do in an ideal situation? If I see this situation?
Move to mid.
I would stop farming this camp and immediately run there, right? Because if it's my job to take it. That's my point, though, right? Like, I identify where my job is and I monitor it, right? And so if I'm a mid laner and I TP bottom, what would a good Clinks player do here while I TP bottom? What would this guy do if he was 8K?
He'll probably push the lane and strafe the tower.
Yeah, so don't I have to get there as soon as fucking possible? Because can my Shadow Shaman defend that?
Not before 6.
No. Is Enchantress wanting to defend that?
No.
No, she wants to do her thing up here, right?
Much obliged.
Is Dazzle going to defend it? Is DK going to defend it? Nobody else is going to defend it, right? So it has to be you. And you have to see this. So, like, if you did this right here, and you saw that mid lane was at their tower, and their creep wave was already dead and shit, I actually don't mind if you walk up and push this tower. I'm going to be clear about this, okay? But you're pushing this tower at the expense of what your responsibility in the game is. If this makes sense, the difference that I'm making here. Because I told him that his job was to... He knew it, too, when I was talking to him. His job was to take the tower's top. So he took this fight bottom while this tower was still there. And I said, okay, what is your job in the game? And he said, he said it's top tower. And I'm like, what should you do after this fight? And he goes, I'm going to go pressure bottom. And I said, what's your job in the game, sir? And he's like, it's to pressure top. I'm like, so where are you going after this fight? And he said, pressuring top. I'm like, when are you done pressuring top? He's like, when I take the tier 2. I'm like, okay, so if you took this fight and this tier 2's gone, where do you go? And he's like, I'll go bottom. I'm like, there you go. Like, ain't that hard. It really isn't when you think about it, okay? So, as a Lina, your responsibility is mid lane. So your thought process when you make that rotation, which I'm being clear is not a bad rotation, okay? You make that rotation.
Yeah.
Your responsibility is mid. So if you think to yourself, whoever on their team is mid, your Shadow Shaman can just sit there soaking XP, you are welcome to stay bottom. Like, or if you choose to. Meaning, like, if that's what you want to do, and you know your responsibility can be done by somebody else for the time being, go, right? And the reason why I egged him on so much about not pressuring this tier 2 is I asked him, who else does it? Right? Nobody. So if he's not doing it, who's doing it? Nobody, right? And so it's like, if your job is to defend this tower and nobody else can do it, guess who's doing it? Nobody, right? So that's why it's so important to think about your role in the game, okay? So
yeah,
think
so
about...
I just want to add one thing, if okay. So in the case of bottom, I've already rotated bottom, so it's very hard for me to actually get back to mid. So in my mind, I was thinking of trading towers, because I knew Klings would push the tower, but I couldn't get back to mid to defend it. So the best case scenario would have been just to push bottom tower.
So basically what's going to happen is this tower is never worth trading for this one, first and foremost. Never. Never worth it. Like, the way I look at it is the kills in the early game, okay, it's just math, or it's just simple. When you kill somebody, the earlier on in the game it is, the less time they're dead. Okay? That's just how it is. So the less time they're dead, that means the closer to the objective you kill them is how likely it is that you're going to push it. Okay? So 9 minutes into the game, the percentage of times that you get a kill here that leads to this tower is like 5%. The times that mid, that I yelled at you to get this tower damage on, was because you killed the Clinks right fucking here. Right? Like, you literally killed him at the tower. So it's like, oh, go hit this damn tower. It's right there. By the time you get to this tower, he's going to be alive again the supports can respond if they see you guys walking down this lane. Like, think about what good players would do. Good players would TP the Bristleback, have Wyvern sitting behind him, and Clinks kills your tower mid, and you don't get shit. You see that, right? Like, how that pans out? What your only option is for Shadow Shaman to TP in here, because you can't get here immediately, which he does, actually, and he distracts the Clinks till you get back. But if you make him stay there alone, then that's all that's going to happen, is he's going to end up doing more than he can handle. Like, he's eating more than biting more than he can chew, or whatever the saying is. So, what I'm trying to say is I understand what your thought process is, and I'm happy you presented it to me, but it's wrong. So, I'm glad to hear, because I'm trying to explain it in a way that counteracts what you're saying. Does that make sense to you why you're wrong?
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay, cool. So just remember what your responsibility is, and when it comes to objectives, like if this was 25 minutes into the game, if you get a kill here, sure, take this tower, because the guy's dead for like 60 seconds. So you can take the tower, but you're not taking this tower before he's alive. You're not even going to damage it before he's alive. So this is immediate run back to mid. And the only reason you're not being punished for this mistake is because that Clinks just didn't give a shit. If I'm that Clinks, what is my rule in the game?
If I see like 3 showing bottom, I'll just push towers.
Okay. What is my rule? I'm pushing the tower. That's the rule. Why do I not generally push the tower on Clinks in this game?
If there's threat.
Okay. So I'm trying to make it so you name specific reasons. Why, in this game, would he not be pushing the mid tower? If you're... put yourself in Clinks' mind, if you know it all.
Yeah, like, Lina can really one-shot Clinks.
Okay.
No one else can.
Okay.
Maybe Shadow Shaman, but mainly Lina.
Okay. So, if his rule, which means the ideal way he wants to play the game, right, is taking your mid tower, and you told me the only thing stopping him is you, does that not scream to you where you should go after you get a kill? Like, do you see what I'm saying here with that mindset?
Yeah.
Okay. That's how you need to think about Dota, right? Like, that's why I'm trying to explain this, like, rule exception thing. How does Clinks play? What is he going to do? Like, if I'm a Clinks player, I want to take the mid tower. So, I'm going to do whatever it takes to take the mid tower, and I'm going to think to myself what it means to, like, why I can't get the mid tower. Does that mean because I'm scared of a rotation from a support? So, if that's, like, if a shaker's missing, I'm not going to walk up to the tower because I get fissured and blocked off? Am I not going to take it because the enemy kills me? Am I not going to take it because they de-push me? Like, whatever the condition for me not taking that mid tower is, the second it's not there, I'm going to go take the mid tower. So Clinks is bad too, because he should know the minute he sees you bottom that that tower is free. But he doesn't do it, because he's bad too. You're in 2K, right? Or 3K, whatever. So it's like, you need to run straight back to mid either way, anyway, because like that's the game you want to be playing. You want to be against him. But if I'm a Storm against Lina, right? What is Lina preventing me from doing on Storm generally? Like early game, 5-6 minutes. Doesn't Lina win that lane?
Yes.
Okay, so what am I usually doing on Storm probably 5 minutes into the game?
Farming.
Jungle, right? Would you say I'm jungling? Most Storms would be jungling at that point, right? And when am I going back to lane ever on Storm?
When Lina shows in a different lane.
Or she's like pushing it into my tower, right? Because I don't want to just give Lina the tower for free, right? Like, I can at least drag the creeps off the tower. So my point is, if I'm Storm, I'm going to be jungling, and then I'm going to be rotating back to the lane whenever it's pushed. But I'm never going back to the lane otherwise. Why would I? Like, I'm jungling creeps, she's hitting lane creeps. The only reason I care about the lane is because I don't want to lose my tower. So, if you have a support that TP's in a mid and says, I can take this farm, do you care if they do that? If you're Storm?
No.
No, right? Because that was what you were going to do anyway. You'll just keep hitting neutrals. Your responsibility is alleviated. You know what I mean? So, like, that's what I'm talking about, is just, like, the way heroes want to play the game. You know? Like, it's something that, honestly, it seems such a ridiculously simple subject in regards to the fact that when I ask players, they generally always know, but they never do it. So
Just a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
If Clint decides to switch lanes, should I be following him in that lane?
No, I think you should take mid. I think mid's the most valuable tower to take, and I don't think anyone else on their team really does a great job of defending it. I think it's really sad that you didn't shrine there, by the way. You shouldn't be content with this level of mana at any point. You either base or you shrine. You should have kill threat. Like, the reason why Clinks can't do what he wants is because you can kill him. Same with other heroes on the map. If you don't have kill threat, your hero... Like, think of what kill threat on your hero does to their lineup, and then that's what you're giving up by this. And that's how you need to think about things when it comes to playing with, like, low mana and stuff. Sometimes kill threat from certain heroes doesn't really matter. But in this game, like, you threaten, like, all their heroes. So I think it's a pretty big deal for any time you have no kill threat, that you better be, like, really close to a freaking Yules, or you're hitting neutrals to get your Shadow Blade, then you're going back to base and then coming out. You know what I mean? There's a lot of indecisiveness I always see when I'm looking at 3K-ish player. Even all the way up, obviously, like I said, but it's like a linear thing of, like, as I go up in MMR, it's less likely that I see inefficiencies. So I just see this as, like, the way I play this is I kill the Clinks at the 5-minute mark. I'm shoving his tower. It's lost, like, half its health. I get the bottom rune because I'm there right at the 6-minute mark, because that's quite possible if you watch the replay back. Pick up the rune. If I think I need a shrine, I take the shrine at 6 minutes into the game. And then I return back to mid. And then I see the dive bottom. I ult the Bristleback, maybe chase the Pangolier like you did. Run immediately back to mid. Fly to myself like 3 clarities. Do it again. Like, same thing, rinse and repeat. Like, that's how you play this game in an ideal situation. And that's why if you put, like, 4 or 5 3Ks against 5 7Ks, guess how many team fights are going to occur in that game? The answer is 0, honestly. There's not going to be any team fights. Why? Because all the stuff I said I'm doing twice as fast as you. So by the time you're trying to fight us, I've already taken your tower and I've walked away. And I'm like, thanks, appreciate it. And I've already hit like 20 more creeps than you. So, like, a lot of what people don't realize is that the majority of these games are decided with their efficiency throughout the course of the game. Not these, like, big deaths and shit like that. So whose job is it for you to push this tower and pressure it?
Enchantress.
What are you as a hero? What did we already say you are? Are you survivable? I'm going to be clear right now. Are you survivable?
No.
Okay. But what did we say you were, sorry?
Kill threat.
Okay. So, are you responsible for hitting this tower? This tier 2
At
top?
that point, I thought I was, but in hindsight, probably not.
Okay, so like I'm saying, we're trying to get you to the point of understanding, right? I'm not saying you can suddenly update what you did in this game, right? I'm telling you beforehand. So these are things. The point that I can make is that these are things you should know beforehand. Obviously, I know what happens because I saw the game already. But so if you're a kill threat, what would be the purpose of you being top at all, if there is a purpose?
If any heroes rotate top, I can probably kill them.
So how does that affect your Enchantress?
It allows Enchantress to push more aggressively.
Okay, yes, absolutely. So, is it worth your time to just sit behind the Enchantress, like right behind her, and just wait for someone to walk top?
No, I should have been neutraling up
yes,
top.
You should be hitting neutrals up top. That's what I'm like getting at, right? I'm trying to eliminate all the possibilities. If you're like a support hero, maybe you just like sit behind her, right? And like wait for someone to come top. If you're like a support like Lion or something with kill threat, you can just sit behind her. Or like you're an Earthshaker. But you're a farming mid laner. So what is first and foremost your responsibility?
Farming.
But what farm?
As in the neutral farms. So the logic I have in my mind for this kind of thing is that I prefer support rotating mid, because the way I've seen really good Linas play is that they never show on map, and the way they do that is to farm neutrals. The
way I look at good Linas, and I think you should adjust your perspective, like I actually think you have good points for what you're saying, but it's just a bit off. So, is they play off map when they're a threat. And I understand that you're a threat now, but what percentage of a threat are you now compared to when you get a Yules? You, like, triple your kill potential on, like, anyone on the enemy team with a Yule Scepter. So, if I'm now in a spot where I'm trying to get to that point where I'm, like, really fucking strong, I don't give a shit if I show on the map as long as I'm not dying. So all I'm trying to do when I'm working my way to farming in these spots is pressure lanes and take fights whenever I have to, but otherwise I'm just farming. But most importantly, if I'm pressuring lanes, that prevents the opponent from grouping up and taking my shit. Like, that's what it does if I pressure lanes. And so, if I'm going to go top here, I think the bare minimum condition is that this is pushed out. So you tell me that you want a support to do it. And I'm absolutely fine with that. Is a support doing it right now?
No.
No. It's just that simple. This is your responsibility. If nobody else is doing it, it is your job. Like, you have to understand that line of thinking. Meaning, if enchant... Okay, how do I word this? If, okay, would you consider Weaver to be a good hero to do what Enchantress is doing right now? Where you're like... Yes. Okay, they're similar in that regard, right? So, yeah, if I'm Weaver and I have an Enchantress, what the fuck do I do on my team?
Just keep pushing.
But she's doing that.
But I guess we can split lanes and push 2 lanes.
So, when there's 2 lanes, are you usually trying to take the tower in both lanes? Or is one of or if we understand the dead lane, one lane is relieving pressure while the other one is creating it, right?
Yep.
So top lane is creating it usually, bottom lane is relieving usually. So, how do I decide if Enchantress goes bottom or Weaver goes bottom?
Whoever's more durable should go bottom.
Yeah.
It's a more dangerous lane.
There you go, right? So if I'm a Weaver, my rule is that I'd usually go top and pressure a lot because that's what I like to do. But I already have an Enchantress doing it, so that's not my job anymore. Do you see that? Like how, because somebody else is doing my job, I consider my next job, like, on the list of things I'd be willing to do. So I'm like, oh, I can survive in the dead lane, in my safe lane, at 15 minutes. I'm just going to sit there hitting creeps while my Enchantress is pressuring top. Like, if you watch players that make the, like, those are the exceptions. Like, okay, so I talked about what Lina wanted to do. If you want to, oh man, this is a crazy concept. I'm going to let this go here, but my point on Lina is, I'm not going to like go into any more detail because it's actually just going to be too much for what I'm trying to get across here, is your job is mid, and nothing else is more important than this mid lane. If this mid lane, if you want it like you did, if this mid lane's not here, you're playing whatever you're doing wrong. So, like, are you allowed to TP to fights? Sure. Are you allowed to quickly kill somebody? Sure. But then, before you do anything else, this lane is at this tower. I don't care if that process takes you 3 minutes. Meaning, like, you pushed it in, you farm creeps, you couldn't go any farther past this. You push it in, farm creeps, push it in, farm creeps. Then they go bottom. Then you push it in. Then you leave. You see what I'm saying? Like,
yep.
That lane gets pushed out. It doesn't matter how long it takes. It gets pushed out, okay? So that's, unless you get like your Euro Scepter, meaning like you hit that timing. The reason why your timing is mid-rotate, is because that's an efficient way to get to your power spike. You haven't like hit your power spike yet, right? So that's the efficient way to get there. So that's why you're playing like this. It's the same way that TAs play. Right? It's like if a TA was doing what you're doing, I'd flame her too. Right? But a TA can still look to pressure towers like this one if this lane's already pushed in and shit, and like the ancients are already farmed, and she wants to like walk top. But she's gonna do the ancient farming and lane pushing, then maybe look to do something else. So you have to cover the bases. You know, you have to get the other stuff out of the way. So
yeah, so I think the mentality is that like when I play these games against, I guess, stronger late game heroes, we feel like we have to pressure towers, and that's why we made that rotation top. Like, had it been a different lineup, I might have gone straight to middle and kept farming. And I guess that's a stupid perspective to have, but that's kind of pressure we have.
No, this is a very high, or very popular perspective, meaning it's very common. So it's stupid in regards to, like, it's an improper reaction to something you know about, I guess. So what I mean is, it's, like, healthy in regards to the fact that you're doing it because you know they have better late game, but it's the wrong reaction. The right reaction is to be efficient, like pressuring, because this is pressuring, to like push this lane in, make them farm it and shit, and like anybody who walks here dies. Like, see how you have this ward? If this lane's pushed in, this lane pushed in, none of them can farm any of this. They really can't. Like, think about it, right? None of them can farm this. So therefore, if you have this lane pushed in, Enchantress is here, and you're here, they're farming here. Is that not pressure? Right? Like, that's a ton of pressure. So you're farming here, and they're farming here. That's pressure. That's literally the definition of pressure. You don't have to actually be hitting the building to be pressuring them, right? Like, you don't have to be hitting the building. So I'm telling you to efficiently pressure them. So the only time you hit the building is when you're the hero that's supposed to be hitting the building. You know, like the Enchantress in this case. As a Lina, the reason why you're farming is so you can get your item that makes you not only more survivable, but also kill threat on almost anybody on the enemy team. And then you can maybe start playing a little more aggressive, right? But this is a spot where, like, because of your rotation, I would argue, guess what's happening? Enchantress goes mid. Why? I guarantee you, in his mind, this is how Dota works for, like, people who play a decent amount of it. It doesn't matter what MMR you are. Do you think you guys have an idea that you're ahead, right? So, in his mind, I know this is how it works, because it's just how it is for me. People subconsciously, when they're ahead like this, know that this lane should not be here. They don't exactly think anything past that. Like, they don't do any more in-depth analysis to themselves about it. But I guarantee you, in his mind, it's like, this lane shouldn't be here. What's happening? Why is this lane here? So guess what's going to happen in your pubs if you don't do your job?
People react.
Someone on your team is going to do it for you. So guess what happens if you're not doing your job and then somebody's now doing your job?
He's not doing his job.
There's two people not doing their jobs. It actually happens sometimes where one person can make 5 people not do their job. Because it's this chain snowball effect. And then suddenly you feed 3 heroes at your safe lane tower. Like, it actually works like that. So that's why, like, in competitive, one player will get kicked because it ruins the entire team's game if one guy is not doing his job. So in pubs, the expense is usually like 1 or 2 people not doing their job as well. Because it doesn't matter if your friends are like 2K, 3K. I guarantee you, in their subconscious mind, he knows this lane should not be pushed like this, and then they'll do your job for them. Like, and so like, this is a spot where, honestly, I think you ruin this a lot, and I do this too. Like at a higher level extent of it. Like, I'll do it in a much more complicated scenario. But now you've kind of, I feel like this is kind of panic mode, meaning you're up by 4K. Fucking farm your Yules. What's happening? This is the dead lane. We're ahead. When we're ahead, we're trying to force objectives. Is this the part of the map we force objectives?
No.
We understand Dota, right? We understand Dota. Okay. What percentage of fights on Radiant when you're ahead should take place on the bottom half of the map? Why would they take place on the bottom half of the map? Ever. If you're Radiant and you're winning.
Our tower.
Which tower?
The bottom tier 2.
The tier 1 is the only one worth defending, honestly. Why is the tier 1 worth defending if you want to defend it? Let's put ourselves in the perspective of the opponents once again. Like we did with the Clinks.
Their farm.
It is so important for them, right? It is so important when the team that is behind to take your safe lane. It is really important to them. I have said it in my dead lane video like 17 times. And it's not a meme. It is very important. Watch high-level games, people. When people are losing by 4K at 13 minutes, they will 4-man the safe lane tower. It is how it is. It is their declaration to you, free information, that that safe lane tower is really important. So, if you understand that, what fights will take place on the bottom half of the map to defend your tier 1? Maybe to defend your tier 2. Is that occurring here?
No.
No, terrible fight. Period. Like, how does this lead to you guys ending the game?
It really doesn't.
It doesn't at all.
Play.
All it does is slow down the opponent's timing a bit, but it also slows down yours. Because you're not actually doing anything. You're not killing any objectives. What objectives do help you in the game?
Tier 2s, Rosh.
Rosh, tier 2s. That's all conveniently in one place. Right here. At what point should you not play top anymore when you're Radiant? And you're ahead?
When Rosh is taken.
Okay. It's beautiful.
Tier 2s.
It's beautiful. You don't necessarily have to take tier 2s. Like, meaning, there are some games where you take Roche, and it's better to take these 2 towers than these 2. And the reason for that is, sometimes, I'm being clear to you and everyone else, the reason why that's sometimes better is because sometimes what you want to do is your timing is the second Roche. So if you kill Roche, you want to use the time that you have Aegis to kill this, so that you can then rinse and repeat and do the same thing for the second Roche. Because if you kill these 2 towers, and you want the second Roche, there's no pressure you're creating anywhere to get this second Roche. Because you're not going to play here and try to get Roche. Do you see what I'm saying? But like, if you have the first Roche, you take these 2 towers are still alive, you can then constantly pressure these 2 towers and then look to take a Roche at any point for the second one. So there are games where if these 2 towers have not been taken yet, you take Roche where it is better to go here. Okay? So my point is, like, let's not get too complicated. You don't leave this area until Roche is fucking dead. Period. Like, you maybe counterplay at the tier 1, maybe at the tier 2, but much less likely at the tier 2. And you don't leave, like, in the minute you take a fight, you're back to what you were doing top. Like, that is, like, that's Radiant. Like, that is why Radiant has the win rate, because all the objectives are in the same fucking place. Dire likes to pressure this and this, but guess what? This and this, like, you want to pressure this and this, like this right here. Like, so once you take this, you take this, and now you're doing the same thing reflected on Dire, is these 2 towers. But guess what isn't here? Roche. It's not there. So Dire then has to usually choose between pressuring these 2 towers or pressuring Roche plus this. In which case, they're only pressuring 2 objectives instead of 3, where Dire is pressuring 3. So, you see how this...
Yeah, so a question here.
Yeah.
This occurs quite often in, I guess, solo queue games.
Yeah.
If your team has committed to a bad fight, should I have the discipline to go top now?
You should push this in and then walk top and push that in too. And like solo killing people and keeping these lanes in. I look at this as, if they wipe your team here, they're getting maybe a tier 2. Maybe. And they're going to have to all group up and take it. And then you've already had this lane at their tier 2. You already have this lane at their tier 2. And because people in your bracket are incredibly inefficient, if you do this efficiently, you might even take these towers before they get to them. Like, if I were to play Lina in your bracket to get better at Dota, meaning to practice, I would probably team fight twice a game. And it would be like 1 to get a tier 3 and 1 to end the game. Like, I would just never hit... Like, if a 5-on-5 occurs, it's going to be so poorly done, I'll just, like, have taken 2 towers by the time the opponent's taken mine. Because Lina just shreds buildings. Like, she clears creep waves really fast and shreds buildings. Lina's probably one of the best heroes to win with at this bracket, in my opinion. So, like, because she falls off a bit, but she kills buildings, she split pushes, she can become survivable, she represents solo kill potential. She has, like, all the shit that allows her to actually solo carry the game. So, just keep this in mind. Like, that you don't have to show up to this shit when it's bad in your pubs, if you're a Lina. If you're a Clinks, even though you shred buildings, if the waves aren't at their towers, you're not getting those waves to those towers anytime soon. You probably have to show up to that fight. You know what I mean? But on Lina, you know, you don't. Any other question while I continue?
No, it's a really good point. I never really thought about it this way.
Okay, cool. That's what our goal is. You know, if I teach you a different way of thinking, that can give you hours and hours of time to work on stuff. That's what our goal is here. So, because guess what? Every time I learn something major, I'm not some fucking genius. It's always somebody presenting to me something I didn't think about. That's all it is. It's the same equivalent. Like, the way I'm teaching you is the way I've learned it myself from better players. So guess why shit's happening on this side of the map now that the opponents are doing? Why are they able to do this and this?
Because the lanes aren't pushed in.
And what happens is, once you give up control of an area, it's very hard to get it back. That's like the better answer. Because you're right, the lanes aren't pushed in. But it's because you guys took that fight bottom, that you have surrendered control. Here's how I look at it. The potential upside of this fight is you get 3 or 4 kills. The potential downside is you lose 2 or 3 heroes and lose all map control. That is the potential downside of going to this fight. If your team gets wiped 4 for 0 while you're pressuring this tower and or this tower, you actually lose no map control, if you think about it. The map distribution remains the same when all of your teammates respawn. You see that? But when you go bottom, now look at the map. Like, it's just a game-losing maneuver by any team. Like, teams, like, obviously good players aren't going to do that. And if you're a split pusher, like, if you want to reliably solo carry the game, you have to be a hero that clears waves rapidly. Otherwise, you just can't. Because you're reliant on your team not taking dumbass fights. So that's why I believe heroes like Clinks and shit are really bad solo carries. Because they rely on their team to not take completely, totally dumb fights. So we finally got the... I don't know why I'm on your perspective with Pangalier's items. So now you've kind of started doing what I would hope you would have done earlier, where you're pushing in and rotating from mid, get a kill top, get the tower, take fights on their side of the map. These are good fights. Whoa! Surprise! Take the tier 2. You see somebody, don't quite get them, that's fine. What are your conditions for high ground? What do you have to get before you go high ground?
Aegis.
Yeah, okay, cool. You're getting a Shadow Blade, this is fine. This tier 2, does this accomplish anything? Why or why not to take this tower?
Well, it means they can't TP and it kind of cuts off the neutrals. But again, it's a reactionary play. We feel like we just need to push towers and end the game.
Okay. Well, my question is, from your perspective, does it actually accomplish anything to kill this building? Why or why not?
I think it does. It cuts off the map, so they can't really TP, or that section they can't really control.
Why not? There's a shrine here and a shrine here. What does this control that this shrine combined with this shrine does not control?
I see. So should a correct play would have been Rosh.
So the way I clarify this before is, does this tower make you taking Roche easier?
No.
Does you taking Roche make taking this tower easier?
Yes, yes.
Okay, good talk. Think about it that way. Your next crucial objective is Roche. That tier 2 does nothing for Roche. So do we give a shit about that tier 2?
No.
Cool. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's how you have to think about it. Okay? That tier 2 does nothing for Roche. Tier 2 mid on either team is almost always taken after Roche. The only time it's taken before Roche is when you, like, wipe them on their side of the map. You think you can take the tower but not Roche in the amount of time they're dead. That's about the only exceptions you see in Pro Dota. But obviously there are exceptions, but I'm giving you the rules. Remember that. Please don't fucking link me a replay, people in chat saying, this is when this team did this. They took the tower before Roche BSJ. I'm not saying it's 100%. On average, it is wrong. And if you do what is expected every single game, with the understanding that it is not correct every single game, guess what? You're going to learn the exceptions. Because sometimes it ain't going to fucking work. And so all those fights you guys lost, like, instead of having this 4K lead, the way you guys lose this game... Okay, what you guys view this as wrong... Okay, so this is what I actually said to you at the start of the coaching session, and I hope you remember this so we can work off of something that I told you I would see happening. The way you win properly against a team with superior late game is by systematically taking the objectives and pressuring while you need your items. So, like... You need to think, what's my next objective? What items do I need to take it, right? And or levels. Items, levels, talents, whatever I need to take it. Or situation, meaning like we need to kill a guy, or he needs to show bottom, or whatever. And so you sufficiently pressure the map. So then 22 minutes into the game, have you ended the game yet?
No.
No, but you're up by 17k, okay? When you have that 4k lead at 13 minutes. Like, the goal is not to say we need to hit buildings and end this game. Our goal is to think, what is our next objective? Linearly. Meaning, like, I don't need you to think about the exact progression of the game, okay? I need you to think, what is next? When can I now do something again? So a lot of times on Heroes, I'll think, like, what item changes that for me? What item, like, what do I need the game to look like? So if I'm a Luna and I'm, like, ahead, and I have superior late game, am I going to build Dragonlance BKB to push buildings if I'm ahead and I have better late game?
No, you're probably good for Manta.
Yeah, I'll go Manta because that allows me to what? Farm faster. And I have better late game, right? So who cares about buildings? If I have better late game and I can just accelerate my own farm with my lead, that's what I'm going to do. But if I have better or inferior late game, then I need to build items that change the way I play the game. Okay? So, like on Luna, if I have Mask of Madness and I go Manta, am I changing the way I play the game?
No.
I'm literally doing the same thing, but faster and, like, more survivably, right? So, if I'm needing to end the game, the way I need to think about the game is this game needs to end at some point. So I need to take an objective. What is that objective? Okay, what do I need for that objective? And you just go one at a time. You know, like you don't try to think we're gonna do this, then that, then this, then that, then that. You're like, we need to take Roche. Okay, everybody, what do we need to take Roche? Get a medallion, you get a BKB, you get, you know, I need, like if I don't have a BKB, we're never getting Roche. If we never get Roche, we're never winning this game. Then you lose the fucking game if your core doesn't buy a BKB. Like, it's just that simple, right? Like, it actually is. So, that's how I look at Dota, right? Like, that's at least how I do. Am I saying that's, like, perfect? No. But, like, obviously you're here for coaching and you're here for my perspective. So, that's how I try to look at ending these games. You don't want to say, we have to take objectives, we have to do it. You have to say, what's next, and what do I need to get it? And then you chill. Meaning, like, your hero is supposed to hit neutrals and push in the mid lane, occasionally rotating until you get Yules. So do that. You know what I mean? It's so much easier said than done. I want to be clear to you, right? I fucked this up. Pro players fucked this idea up, okay? But you need to have this idea, like, we're going to ignore laning mechanics. Like, they were there. There could have been a few better things. When you kill somebody, please have the sense of urgency to, like, push the lane and shit. Like, to your max capacity, fly yourself out clarities. It happened to him here, where I said, what was your role in the game at, I'll show you his example of this whole concept, okay? So, I said, what's your role in the game at this current moment? And he's like, I'm pressuring the towers. That's what he told me he was doing. And I was like, that's absolutely correct. That is what you're supposed to be doing. So I'm like, when you get kills, what are you then doing? He's like, I'm still pressuring towers. I'm like, that is correct. Like, so you're still gonna, like, so if his job is to pressure towers, when should he kill people?
When it prevents the tower from being pushed.
Yeah, when they get in his way, right? Like, it's that simple, when they get in his way. So, this Doom is in his way. Perfect kill. Right? That's fine, it's a kill. So, has his job changed? And this is something I ask myself, by the way, after every kill. Has my job changed?
No.
If I'm Enchantress? So, what's the problem here?
He's lacking mana.
Okay. So, what should he do? I don't know if you watched the session. What should he do right now?
He should get an Ogre Axe into free clarities.
Yeah. And I would even consider, because you're here to help nuke the Waven, if I were him, I'd consider just TPing Shrine and then coming right back. What I might do is kill these creeps and then hit the building a bit, have them respawn, TP Shrine, and come right back. Why am I okay to TP to the Shrine? When would it be bad to TP to Shrine? Rather than walking.
If the creeps aren't pushed in.
Okay, so I'm actually gonna. It's hard to arrive at the conclusion I want you to arrive at. Basically saying, is there any circumstance that he doesn't want to be top?
If there's a big team fight for an important objective, you need a TP then.
But at this point in the game, is that a scary thing for him? Is it his job? Who counter ganks, him or you?
Me.
Okay, so is it his job to be anywhere else on the map than top? So the reason why it's okay for him to TP here, and the reason why it would be bad to TP here, is if it was you, and like you may be needed bottom in sometime in the next 80 seconds. Okay? But he's not needed anywhere else. He needs to be top. So he can TP here and then walk back, and that's efficient. If I were him right now, I would probably push this in. Like, now that I didn't do this for his game, but like I'll now do it. I told him to buy an Ogre Axe and a bunch of clarities, but like I would probably kill these 3 creeps, hit the tower until these 2 heroes are alive, TP here, Shrine, while the Ogre Axe, 4 clarities, and a TP's flying out to me on that courier. That's like exactly what it would look like. Like I would have already started the courier command coming now while I'm doing this, and then it meets me at the shrine, and then I come right back. And this whole time, you pushed in mid, and then you're hitting neutrals around this area, and if anybody comes back top, they die again. Like, but the reason why it's so important that you're not doing this, and this just comes up again, is by you doing this, that means this is here instead of here, and this means that this allows 3 of their heroes to come here, leading to this.
I guess you're more.
You see what I'm saying? You see how this is all a progression?
Yep.
Okay, so it's just it seems hard. I know it does. Like, I'm not saying that just to make you feel better. It is hard. So what I need people to understand is, to be frank, it's much simpler on Radiant. It's so simple on Radiant. If I'm this, like, pressuring offlaner, I never leave top until I take that tier 2. And even when I take that tier 2, sometimes I still stay anyway. Because sometimes you can still pressure the tier 3 if you're like a Weaver. Well, usually what happens is if you take this tower and this tower as an offlaner, you then rotate to here. If that's still there. So a lot of what dictates whether or not I stay top is if this tower's still here. But like, if I'm a mid laner, a lot of games you're just a Storm or a Lina or an Invoker. Don't all those heroes play the same damn way? Push out the lane, hit neutrals, push out the lane, hit neutrals. Get like Kaya on Storm, get like Treads Ags on Invoker, maybe even go like the Quas Wex, but that's a different playstyle. We're talking about Exor right now. It's like Lina does the same thing, gets a Yules and then changes, right? So it's okay to occasionally mess up a TP. You know, maybe you TP'd, it was a bad thing. You TP'd to the bottom lane, maybe you even died, okay? If you TP'd bottom and it was a bad TP at like 11 minutes into the game. Just say that happens. That, honestly, in your bracket, will not be that big of a deal if you just go right back to fucking doing whatever you're supposed to be doing. But when you do something that's not what you're supposed to be doing, and you guys just hang out for like 2 or 3 minutes accepting that you TP'd there or accepting that you're there now, is what kills you, okay? Like, if you watch what he did, right? Like, at the 12-minute mark, he gave up on top. Like, when I told him, like, yeah, okay, this is wrong. It should somehow just slap him in the face sometime right now that, what the fuck am I doing? Go top. Like, look how long it is before he returns to top after he leaves. He left at 12 minutes.
A dominating performance.
Took him 2.5 minutes, and he's at his own tier 1. Okay? So, like, it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things if you guys leave your responsibility for a mistake. So I'm trying to tell you there's room for error. You don't have to play it at a 7K level for you guys to win these games. Okay? If he, at some point within a minute of leaving top lane, realized he should have been back top, then he's going to go back top and everything's like okay. It's recoverable at that point. When he leaves his lane for almost 3 minutes, that means he hasn't been doing his job for 3 minutes. Look what happened in 3 minutes. You know what I'm saying? It's not coincidence. It's just how Dota goes. If you guys improperly play the map, however long you're out of place is how long this is going to start ticking down to not the way you want it to go. But suddenly, at this stage of the game, you guys finally get back top, where you guys should have been playing a long-ass time ago. Where is it here? Okay, so we got back to top. We finally rotate here as a team. And that lead suddenly starts increasing a bit again. Crazy. And then you go take a fight where I told you shouldn't be taking one? Suddenly, not so good. Like, yeah, you guys get kills or whatever, but the lead went from 2K to 1K. Like, it's not a coincidence, right? Like, I wasn't looking at the top of the screen when I was talking to you about these team fights. I just know in my mind, I'm like, oh, I wouldn't do that. Oh, I wouldn't do that. And it's like, because I've had more time, more experience, whatever, better players telling me this kind of stuff for you. So I know we've spent pretty much our entire session doing this, but I feel like for you, this is the last thing I'm going to clarify, and this will, I think, just overall save you a lot. So other than the pressuring mid thing and like hitting buildings, like making sure when you get kills, making use of it. Other than that aspect, you seem to know what the hero wants to be doing. Okay, like you seem to have that knowledge. So there's the three options. If you play here, you are counterplaying what they're doing. So if you're a really tanky hero like a Bristle or a Weaver, who's like not tanky but like survivable, or you know like a Timbersaw potentially, and you think the most useful thing in your time is to prevent the enemy team from getting any objectives, this is your home right here. This is your home when you're raiding, right? If you're the hero that's meant to be playing efficiently, probably the safest on the map, maybe second safest, like somewhere in that region, and you're just trying to get farmed up in items, you're usually pushing mid and farming this shit. Okay? Does this have to be the mid laner doing that?
Ideally, yes.
Ideally, but what if it's a Terrorblade? If you watch my last Terrorblade game, I'm doing that from like 12 to 15 minutes. Because I'm a hero that farms fast, gets 1 or 2 items, and then wants to do stuff. So, I want to be clear that this is not always the safe laner. This is not always the mid laner. This is not always the off laner. Relieve pressure by preventing the enemy team from taking objectives. Efficiency plus just making sure your tower doesn't die. Maybe applying a bit of pressure to their mid. Pressure. Pressure! Whatever your hero does, that is where you go. Pressure, efficiency, and safety is in here. Like, this is all efficiency and safety. And this is relieving pressure by being strong and, like, not dying. And if you understand that, and then reverse it on Dire, you know, do a little flip on Dire, and you just stick to that, meaning if something happens in the game and you get sidetracked, maybe you get distracted, maybe you get thrown off course, and every time you get thrown off course, once whatever's happening, whatever chaos is occurring, like a team fight or some random shit, when that ends, just have a sticky note on your monitor saying, what is my job? And then go do it. Like, actually. I've told people to do this kind of shit before. But, like, I think your friend should do it, too. The one that is playing Enchantress. Do you feel like this has completely changed the way you thought about the game? Because I feel like it should, but maybe not.
Yeah, I think two things change. I don't think we realize what objective taking is in the particular order of objectives. And the second part is I think we've been playing very reactionary Dota the whole time. A lot of us will look at the mini-map and just follow heroes around the map.
That is exactly what happens.
MMR.
That is no, it happens even in like 5K. It even happens like 5K. When I play against Divine players, that's what it appears to me, is they're just following me wherever I go. Like, that's what's happening. Like, they're never there ahead of time. Whenever they're there ahead of time and I'm like in a Divine rank game, I'm like, holy shit, like that surprised me. I wasn't actually thinking they would do that. Where they were there ahead of time. Because if you're ahead of time, that's because you know what the other guy's gonna do based on this knowledge. You can apply everything I just told you about your hero to what the opponents should be doing. And guess what? Every time they're messing up and you're not, this is going to go up. It just does. And that's why if you put 4 or 5 3Ks against 5 7Ks, this number is just going to slowly go up and up and up and up. Because on average, the 7Ks will be doing the right thing in comparison to the 3Ks. That's just how it is. So when you're, like, if you play Lina, right? Like, I would recommend for this learning lesson for yourself, play 10 games of Lina in a row and think about this whole concept as it applies to Lina. Because this concept applies differently, right, to every hero. Think about how this concept applies to Lina. And then do it on, like, some mid laner like, I mean, TA is similar to Lina. You could do Storm because he's more about, like, getting kills rather than pushing out lanes. Or pushing towers. He doesn't really take towers or Roche. You can do it on a hero like Clinksmith. He's a hero that pressures the tower and then looks to rotate for kills off map. He helps his team take towers by killing people. You know, like, all these mid laners, like, they approach the game a bit differently. So if you watch, like, if you don't understand how that hero should approach it, you should just watch somebody. Like, watch a replay or two. That's why you watch it. Have these things in mind. And then you should play that hero 10, 15 times in a row. Like, I highly recommend if you want to learn how to perfect this on Lina, you have to play Lina 15 times in a row. That's why I played Clinks 30 games in a row, because I was like, I didn't understand this stuff fully. Like, I didn't understand exactly where I was supposed to be. I didn't understand, like, whether or not I was supposed to show in lane. I didn't understand what exact items I was supposed to build. And then after playing 30 games of Clinks, I feel like, honestly, I know exactly what I'm supposed to do on Clinks, at least until the 25, 30-minute mark. I know as that far, almost guaranteed. Like, it feels really good for me. You know, like what item I'm supposed to build, where on the map I'm supposed to play, what my role in the game is, right? So, I feel like for you, you guys were doing the right things, and then you just get distracted, and then you give up. Like, you stop doing it, right? You play reactionary. Like, something else happens, the other team did, or one of your teammates did or something, and then you just forget. You just drop it. And I think it's a big deal that, honestly, you would probably gain 1,000 MMR, if not more, simply saying, what is my job? Because you start doing it, and then you stop. And then you just never go back. And then by the time you go back, it's too late.
Yeah, it's definitely discipline. We definitely tilt quite a bit. We have a bad team fight, and then we don't know what to do. Everyone's kind of jumping around.
Yeah, and that's the point, is if you have this mindset of what my next job is, the games where you see someone like me get super fucking emo is when I think about what my job is, and I just can't fucking do it anymore. I'm like, that was such a game-ruining play, or, you know, I'll say shit like that. And I'm like, it's actually because I think to myself what my job was and what I had to do in the game, and because of whatever I did or whatever my teammates did, I just can't play Dota anymore. Like, I can't do my job, whatever it was. But it's like, if you look at this point, like the 10-minute mark, or the 9-minute mark where you rotated bottom and onwards, you could have just resumed pushing mid and rotating for like the next 4 minutes. You had that option, and you just never did it. You know what I mean? So the thing is, in your bracket, the nice thing about it is I'm teaching these concepts to you from a 7K's perspective. You have so much more room for error. So it's not like you have to be as good as me at this stuff to gain MMR, you know? And that's why these players that are like 8K and stuff, compared to me, who's 7.7, is because they're just slightly better at this stuff than I am. That's all it is. They understand their job a little bit more. They're in the right place on the map just a slight percentage more of the time. They do things slightly faster. Whatever. Right? It's just little things on the same concepts. It applies all the way from 2K all the way up to 7 to 8. Like, that's how it is. It's just, it becomes much more complicated as you get really high up. So, any questions before we call it, man?
No, I think this is quite. It changes the way we play Dota. I think there's a lot we can work on. It was really insightful. Thanks a lot. Yeah,
no problem, dude. I appreciate you signing up, and I'm sorry if I grilled you a lot that session. I was just trying to be harsh in a good way. Whose girlfriend was it that booked this?
The Enchantress. It's a surprise birthday present.
Nice.
So as a result, we had no time to really prepare for this.
Oh, nice. Okay, that's cool. No, I just wanted to shout that out. That sounded pretty cool. So tell her she's a boss, and thanks for signing up again. Or tell her thanks for signing up, I guess. And I'll and hello. I accidentally left the call for a second, and I will see you later, dude. I just
Cheers, dude. Thanks so much.
Yeah, no problem.